Okay, so in this second video, we're going to look at our month-to-date, quarter-to-date, and year-to-date position for our income statement. In addition, we'll look at deaggregating the profit and loss key areas from a sales and an expense perspective, both on a quarterly and monthly cadence perspective. We'll step into the customer analysis drill through page, and if we have the time, we'll do a bunch of other stuff. Now, the last video looked at year-over-year analysis. Just know that we have an actual versus a plan stroke budget, which would be essentially exactly the same thing, except now we're looking at the actual versus the budget figures rather than the prior year figures. So let's not labor that point. So let's go directly to this month-to-date, quarter-to-date, and year-to-date. Now, if you had a chance to see the first video, you should recognize these numbers from a net income perspective. We're looking at year-to-date, a year-to-date position, and the selected month is December. If instead we chose November, and before we do that, let's actually get more of a spreadsheet look. If instead we decided let's actually look at November, but we only want to see the month of November. So now we're just looking at the actual versus prior year and plan, and we're looking at the dollar delta from a prior year and a plan perspective against actual, the percentage delta for each of those respectively. So currently we're looking at the month of November, but if we wanted a quarter to date position, so that would mean we would have October and November, we should see these numbers almost double, ballpark. So if we were to say, no, actually we want the quarter to date, we'll select it, and these numbers will increase by about a factor of 2 because now we have October and November that we're looking at here. And then if we said, well, actually we want the year-to-date position, which now would be 11 months to November, we can see the 11 months to November here. Let's reset this. Let's go back to December, year-to-date, and then we can step into any level that we choose to here. So we've built it out to 3 levels currently. So if we were to say, look, interested actually in seeing more about cost of sales, and I'd like to look at direct job expenses, then we can step into it. And now we're seeing the next level down, actual versus prior year, actual versus plan, and the respective deltas. And again, we can select the month under review, look at it for the month, the quarter-to-date position, and indeed the year-to-date position. Okay, so let's look at the next dashboard. So what we're looking at here is deaggregating the key chunks or categories within the income statement. And we're looking at it this year over year, and we've done something similar for actual versus the plan stroke budget. So let's actually get into the weeds here. What we have on the left-hand side would be the revenue stream. So we got new commercial, we got residential rehab, and we got residential small jobs. And we're looking at a quarterly cadence in terms of how they're doing last year versus this year. And on the right-hand side, we have our key expense categories: cost of sales, operating expenses, other income, taxes. So let's explore the revenue side of things. Let's open this out on its own page. What we're seeing here is visually that for the new commercial, we can see that we had a very good first quarter, and then we've had progressively worse quarters, running us from a 43 prior year to a 36 million this year. On the other hand, our residential rehab has done a lot better, and we've gone from 18 million, and we've had an uplift of 35% to 25.2 million. So if we wanted to, we can actually look at the detail here. So if we decided for Q2 for residential rehab, we want to actually step into the detail, we're going to go through to the customer analysis and see what made up that 5.8 million variance. Now we're seeing the 5.8 million positive variance here, and effectively what we're looking at here is we had an actual for Q2 of 8.9 million versus prior year of 3.1 million. So we've had an uplift or a delta, a positive delta of almost 6 million, or we're up 188%. So that's the first thing. I suppose then the second thing is we can see on a monthly basis, April, May, and June, how we've done versus last year, both from a variance and a percentage perspective. Down here on the right-hand side, we're seeing customer 21 is actually making up 84% of this entire 8.8 million spend for Q2. That's interesting. And on the left-hand side here is by customer, how much each of them spent, arranged highest to lowest. So if we were to select customer 21, can we get any intel? Probably the key piece of intel is it's a new customer. We didn't have anything last year for this, or certainly we didn't have anything for this customer for the last quarter of last year. Let's be precise. That's the first thing. Second thing is if we were to step into customer 10, when we compare this quarter to quarter of last year, we did 630 this quarter as against last year, 682. So we're down about 8%. And of course, as we step through the entire year, we may see a slightly different look for each of these customers. Okay, so let's go back here. So now let's look at total expenses and within that cost of sales. So if we were to look at January of Q1, what we're seeing is our actual spend for this year was 5.1 million for the month of January, as against same month last year of 2.2. So we had a negative variance or delta, because it's a call center, of about 3 million or 130%. That's the first thing. Second thing is, if we were to right-hand key and drill through to its own page, we can understand for January precisely what's making up this variance from a vendor expense line and understand exactly where we spent our money. Thirdly, we could step into any of these and get a better visual as to what it is we're seeing. So from an operating expenses perspective, we're seeing that we spent 5.1 million. We spent about 840,000 more than we did last year, or about 20%. And we can see the monthly cadence as to where the over and under spend is. And indeed, we can drill through to its own page to understand exactly what's happening in any or all of these months. And then finally, if we chose to, we can drill up to a quarterly cadence and get more of a quarterly feel to what's happening with the data set. So let's look at the next dashboard, customer and vendor analysis. So we're looking at the income statement for year over year, and we're going to look at gross sales, step into new commercial, knowing that we actually earned 36.3 million. So let's actually step into the customer analysis on that, looking at 36 million. So what we're seeing here is we earned 36 million as against 43.4 for the prior year, down 7.1 million or 16% down. It also is telling us that for the first 4 months, we did well relative to last year, and then everything after that, we underperformed. Then on the bottom right-hand corner here, we've looked at each individual customer, knowing that we're looking at new commercial. This is telling us what part of the sales we're looking at, new commercial. So the customer 5 made up 36% of the total sales for the year, total sales being 36 million. Customer 5 made up 36% of that. So basically the first probably 5 or 6 are making up almost 70-75% of the total sales for new commercial. So if we were to select customer 5, then we can see that last year we did 14 million with the same customer. This year we did 13.1. So we're down about 7%. And this is the monthly cadence in terms of what we build them. Now, similarly, if we were to step into vendor analysis, what we're seeing is the same thing, where we spent 54 million as against 52 million prior year. So we spent about 1.2 million more. And basically we can step through the vendors and look at what we spent with them this year versus last year to get a sense of how much money is going out the door. Okay, next. So let's wrap this up quickly. What we're seeing here, actually, let's kill this and we'll just build it out quickly. So what we're seeing here is our loss for the year and the respective key parts within the profit and loss account. Let's step into the operating expenses and let's look at chart of accounts level 3. Then we'll step into, say, travel expenses and we'll blow out quarterly, and then we'll look at Q3. This is arranged highest to lowest rather than from a quarterly cadence perspective. And let's look at vendors. So we know we spent, okay, so let's back this up. So if we click on vendor, so we know that for operating expenses, and looking at travel within operating expenses of 331, for Q3 we spent 87,000, and of that about 80+% was spent with vendor 417. And if we right hand key to drill through, we can drill through to the detail and understand what was happening there. That's the first thing. And I suppose second thing, without laboring this is more of a standard P&L to 3 levels of detail. So basically we're seeing our profit versus last year, delta percentage. And then as we step through this, if we were to open it up, we can look at, say, residential small jobs. We can see that actual versus last year and the delta and the percentage delta. And then down here is showing us the monthly cadence in terms of what it is we're selecting. Okay, let's wrap it at that.